History of sound and music. A comprehensive overview, scientific history of sound. Acoustics through the ages. The scientific exploration of sound dates to antiquity and has evolved through many civilizations and eras. In ancient Greece, Pythagoras, 6th century BC, is often credited as a founder of acoustics. He famously studied vibrating strings and discovered that musical intervals correspond to simple ratios of string length. This led to the Pythagorean scale, tuning system, and the idea that mathematics underpins musical harmony. Aristotle, 4th century BC, later correctly theorized that sound travels as waves through the air, though he mistakenly believed high-pitched sounds traveled faster than low-pitched ones. In the 1st century BC, the Roman engineer Vitruvius described sound propagation accurately and even advised on acoustical design of theaters. By the 6th century AD, Boethius in Rome had noted that the pitch of a note relates to the frequency of vibration, reflecting a growing understanding of the physics of sound. During the scientific revolution, major advances laid the groundwork for modern acoustics. In the early 17th century, Galileo Galilei investigated vibrating strings and the correlation between frequency and pitch. Shortly after, French scientist Marin Mersenne measured the frequencies of musical tones and formulated Mersenne's laws of string vibration, 1636, which became fundamental to musical acoustics. Experimenters like Robert Hooke produced controlled sound waves, using a rotating cogwheel siren in 17th C, and Joseph Sauveur, around 1700, proposed the term acoustics for the science of sound. The wave nature of sound was conclusively demonstrated by vacuum experiments. In 1650, Athanasius Kircher showed a ringing bell in a partial vacuum loses sound, and later in 1660 Robert Boyle pumped air out completely to prove that a medium, air, is required to transmit sound. By the 18th and 19th centuries, acoustics developed into a rigorous scientific discipline. Mathematicians like Leonhard Euler, Daniel Bernoulli, and Jean d'Alembert derived the wave equation for sound propagation, mid-18th C, explaining how sound waves travel through air and materials. The speed of sound in air was first approximated by Newton, 1687, and corrected by Laplace, 1816, using thermodynamics. The 19th century saw Hermann von Helmholtz investigate the physiology of hearing and combination tones, publishing On the Sensations of Tone in 1863, and John William Strutt, Lord Rayleigh, rigorously defined the mathematics of acoustics, publishing The Theory of Sound in 1877. Around the same time, inventions by Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell applied acoustic science to technology, telephone, phonograph, bridging theory, and practical sound engineering. By the early 20th century, acoustics had subfields. Architectural acoustics, pioneered by Wallace Sabine's work on reverberation in 1898. Ultrasonics and electroacoustics, transforming our understanding of sound and laying the groundwork for modern audio technology and acoustical engineering. Cultural history of music across the world. Origins in prehistory and antiquity. Human music is older than civilization, emerging long before written records. In prehistoric times, early humans likely used their voices, clapping, and simple percussion in communal rituals and communication. The oldest known musical instruments are Paleolithic bone flutes, dating to roughly 40 years ago, indicating that music making was already an established part of human culture by the Upper Paleolithic. Notably, a vulture bone flute found in Germany with 5 finger holes has been dated to 40 BP. Other prehistoric instruments include percussive objects like rattles or sticks. Indeed, evidence from later prehistoric sites shows that by around 7000–6000 BC in China, Jiahu site, people crafted bone flutes tuned to specific scales. By the Neolithic era, music had diversified. For example, Neolithic China's people had developed multiple gudi flutes with deliberate tuning, and in the Indus Valley, c. 2500–2000 BC, archaeologists have found rattles, vessel flutes, and depictions of drums and harps. These findings suggest that pre-literate societies worldwide all developed music, using it in rituals, dance, and daily life, even if the details are lost to time. With the rise of the first civilizations, music took on important ceremonial and social functions, and distinct musical traditions emerged in different regions. In Mesopotamia, by the 3rd millennium BC, Sumerians were using lyres, harps, and flutes. The royal tombs of Ur, c. 2500 BC, yielded lyres and a silver double pipe, indicating an ensemble of instruments and even a rudimentary scale system. Ancient Egypt similarly had a rich musical culture, documented from c. 3000 BC. Wall paintings show harps, lutes, flutes, and percussion in use, and music was integral to Egyptian religious life and court life. In China, music was linked to cosmic order and governance, By the Zhou dynasty, c. 1000 BC, the Chinese had bronze chime bells, such as the Bianzhong of Marquis Yi, 5c. BC, capable of playing complex scales. The Indus Valley Civilization, 2500 2000 BC, left artifacts of small drums and paintings of dancers, suggesting music and dance in ritual. Meanwhile, ancient Indian texts like the Vedas, 1500 1000 BC, were chanted rather than spoken, pointing to musical chant traditions in South Asia. Ancient Greece profoundly influenced Western music theory. Greek philosophers documented the mathematical ratios of musical intervals, e.g., the octave, fifth, fourth, and developed concepts of musical modes. Instruments like the lyre, associated with Apollo, and aulos, double reed pipes, associated with Dionysian rituals, were prominent. Greek music was monophonic, single melody, and often connected to poetry and drama. The earliest known complete musical composition, the Sakylos Epitaph, on a century AD, is a Greek song inscribed with musical notation. Greek theory influenced later Mediterranean and European music via texts preserved by Romans and medieval scholars. Other early cultures also had vibrant musical traditions. Persia and the Near East had harps, lutes, and drums, e.g., depictions in Babylonian and Assyrian art, and musical theory flourished later in the Islamic Golden Age, c. 8th, 13th centuries AD, with scholars like Al-Farabi writing on music. In pre-colonial Africa, music was largely oral, but no less developed. Ancient Egyptian music is documented, and sub-Saharan Africa had rich traditions of drumming, chanting, and instruments like xylophones and mbiras. In fact, xylophones likely originated in Southeast Asia and spread to Africa in antiquity, illustrating early intercultural exchange. In the Americas, indigenous civilizations also used music ceremonially. For example, the Maya and Aztecs had flutes, drums, and conch shell trumpets to accompany rituals and court events. Across all these cultures, music in antiquity was typically monophonic and learned by oral tradition, though by around 1400 BC we find the first known music notation. A cuneiform tablet from Ugarit, Syria, preserves the Hurrian hymn to Nikal, a cult song with notation for a lyre. Early modern to 19th century developments. By the 16th, 18th centuries, global music entered a period of increased interchange and development. In Europe, the Renaissance and Baroque eras, c. 1400, 1750, produced an explosion of innovation, complex polyphony, e.g., Palestrina's choral works, invention of new forms, like the opera, first operas c. 1600 in Italy, sonata and concerto forms, and the tempering of tuning systems, 12-tone, equal temperament, gradually adopted by the 18th century. Instrumental music became as important as vocal, especially with inventions like the violin family, emerging in the 16th C. In Italy, and keyboard instruments, the harpsichord, clavichord, and ultimately the piano invented, 1700. European art music of the classical, c. 1750, 1820, and Romantic, 19th C. Period saw composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Wagner push musical complexity and expression to new heights, alongside the growth of public concerts and virtuoso performers. At the same time, Europe's colonization and global trade brought increased awareness, and often appropriation, of non-European music, while also spreading European musical styles worldwide, e.g. hymns and military band music introduced by missionaries and colonial armies. Other world regions had important musical advances in this era as well. In Ottoman Turkey and Persia, classical music reached new heights, with refined makam systems and instruments like the development of the piano-like canon zither. Arab, Turkish, and Persian music exchanged ideas and repertoire, sustaining a rich pan-Islamic musical heritage. Indian music saw the flourishing of Mughal court music. Legendary musicians like Tansen, 16th C, were said to work miracles with their ragas. Many new ragas and compositions were created, and the sitar and tabla became prominent in North India around the 18th century. China's Qing dynasty and Japan's Edo period maintained their classical traditions, e.g., kabuki theater's musical component in Japan and regional operas in China, even as they encountered Western music through missionaries late in this period. By the 19th century, global music began to modernize in new ways. Nationalism influenced music. For instance, folk melodies were integrated into art music, as with Devo, Ak, or Mussorgsky in Europe. In the United States, a melting pot of musical influences, new genres emerged from the collision of African, European, and indigenous traditions. The spirituals and work songs of enslaved African Americans evolved into blues by the late 1800s, while European dance forms and instruments contributed to genres like bluegrass and country. In Latin America, mestizo styles blending Spanish, African, and indigenous elements gave rise to genres like Cuban son and Argentine tango by the end of the 19th century. 20th and 21st century. Globalization and new genres. The 20th century saw an unprecedented proliferation of musical styles and the global spread of music through new media. Jazz, born in the US 1900 from African American blues and ragtime, became a worldwide phenomenon by the 1920s, emphasizing improvisation and syncopation. Popular music exploded with the advent of mass recording and broadcast. From the big band and swing era, 1930s, 40s, to the rock, roll revolution, mid-1950s, built on blues and country roots, and the rise of rock, pop, soul, R&B, and hip-hop in the later 20th century. These genres, though originating largely in the United States and UK, drew from global sources. For example, rock's emphasis on guitar riffs has roots in West African string rhythms, and hip-hop's emphasis on rhythm and oral poetry echoes griot traditions. Classical music in the 20th century also reinvented itself. Atonal and serial compositions, electronic music experiments, minimalist music, etc. While many non-Western traditions modernized or merged with popular forms, Afrobeat in West Africa, Bollywood film music in India, blending classical with pop, cantopop, J-pop in East Asia, etc. Crucially, global communication made music more transnational. A Latin American genre, like bossa nova, could inspire French jazz musicians. Jamaican reggae, itself influenced by American R&B and Caribbean mento, became popular on multiple continents. And in the 21st century, genres like K-pop, South Korean pop, or electronic dance music circulate globally via the internet. Traditional music has also been revitalized or preserved through world music movements and UNESCO heritage efforts, recognizing forms like Georgian polyphonic singing or Tibetan opera as treasures. Today's musical landscape is truly global, a mosaic where ancient traditions continue, often in ritual or folk contexts, alongside constant innovation and fusion, reflecting music's universal role in human culture. Chronological timeline of major milestones in sound, music history. To summarize the vast history above, here is a timeline of major cultural, technological, and theoretical milestones in sound and music. C. 40. 0 BP. Oldest known musical instruments, bone flutes, in use by early modern humans. C. 2000. 500. 1500 BC. Ancient civilizations form musical systems, e.g., Sumerian lyres and harps in Mesopotamia, Egyptian rituals with harps and flutes, Vedic chant in India. Oldest surviving musical notation from c. 1400 BC in Ugarit Hurrian hymn, 6th century BC. Pythagoras in Greece discovers numerical ratios of musical intervals, founding early music theory, 4th century BC. Aristotle posits sound as wave motion in air. In China, the Zhou dynasty's bell sets demonstrate advanced musicology, 12-tone scales, on bronze chimes. On a century BC, Vitruvius documents acoustics and theater design. Across the ocean, Maya and other Mesoamerican cultures depict musicians in ritual murals. c. 6th century AD, Boethius, in Europe, links musical pitch to frequency. Ancestors of many modern instruments exist, e.g., early lutes, flutes, drums, across Old and New Worlds. 9th, 11th centuries. Musical notation invented in medieval Europe, neumes, then Guido d'Arezzo's staff, enabling complex polyphony. Meanwhile, Arabic scholars translate and augment Greek music theory, and court music thrives in China, Tang Dynasty, and Japan, Gagaku, 12th, 13th centuries. Polyphonic music, organum, motets, blooms in Europe. Troubadour, secular songs recorded. In the Middle East, Safi al-Din develops a systematic music theory modes, rhythms. Magna Carta era in England also sees emergence of musical round. Sumer is Ikumen in 1250. Earliest polyphonic piece in English, 15th century. The printing press is invented, c. 1450, and by 1501, Ottaviano Petrucci prints the first collection of polyphonic music, revolutionizing music dissemination. The Renaissance brings pan-European styles, e.g., Josquin's masses, and cross-cultural musical exchanges via exploration. 1600. Birth of opera in Italy. Eurydice, 1600. A milestone in Western art, combining music and theater. Around the same time, the Baroque period sees invention of the violin family and formalization of tonal harmony. In South India, composer Purandara Dasa, 16th c, codifies Carnatic music lessons, earning him the title Father of Carnatic Music. 1709. The piano, fortepiano, is invented by Bartolomeo Cristofori, marking a new era for keyboard music with dynamic expression. Globally, European colonization accelerates musical exchange, e.g., African slaves in the Americas preserve rhythms that will seed new genres. 1750, 1800. Classical era in Western music, symphonies, string quartets by Haydn, Mozart, etc. 1770s. First description of African American spirituals. 1780s. Early published collections of Indian classical songs by scribes in Tanjore, indicating cross-pollination of oral and written traditions worldwide. 1800s. Rapid developments in both music and sound science. Acoustics becomes a formal science, e.g., Fourier analysis of sound in 1822, Helmholtz's studies on sound perception in 1860s, Rayleigh's theory of sound 1877. Culturally, new musical genres emerge. Romantic nationalism in music, e.g., Chopin's Polish dances, Verdi's Italian operas, and in the US, the blues begin to form post-Civil War. 1877. Thomas Edison invents the phonograph, enabling sound recording and playback for the first time. This breakthrough in sound technology is quickly followed by others. 1887. Emil Berliner introduces the flat gramophone disc, setting the stage for the recording industry. 1897. 1906. The radio is developed. Marconi's wireless telegraphy. 1890s. First audio radio broadcasts by early 1900s, allowing music to be broadcast to mass audiences. By 1910s, records and player pianos spread music globally. 1920s. Electronic instruments debut. Leon Theremin invents the theremin in 1920, the first mass-produced electronic musical instrument played without touch. The spread of electrical recording. 1925. Greatly improves sound fidelity on records. Jazz goes global via radio and records in the 1920s, and the first network music broadcasts bring classical and pop music into homes. 1930s, 40s. Magnetic tape recording is developed. Germany, 1930s, and later commercialized, post-WW2, allowing edits and multi-track recording. The electric guitar emerges, early prototypes in the 1930s, popularized in 1950s, and the Hammond organ, 1935, brings electric tone to churches and jazz. During WWI, songs like Vera Lynn's became symbols of hope, showing music's power and social context. 1948. Introduction of the LP record, 33 RPM vinyl, enabling albums of 20 yaun, minutes per side, and 1949. The 45 RPM single, revolutionizing how music is consumed. 1950s. Emergence of rock and roll, first hit records around 1954, 55, e.g., by Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, blending blues, country, and R&B. This youth-driven music revolution soon spreads worldwide. 1960s. Advent of synthesizers. In 1964, Robert Moog unveils the Moog modular synthesizer, a new electronic instrument that can create a vast palette of sounds, widely adopted in pop and avant-garde music by the end of the decade. Also in the 60s, music plays a central role in social movements, civil rights anthems, anti-war protest songs. 1969. The Woodstock Festival exemplifies music's cultural influence on a generation. 1970s. Development of digital sound technology begins. The first digital synthesis experiments and computer-generated music appear. Max Matthews and colleagues had produced computer music by the late 1950s. By 1974, the first real-time digital synth, the synclavier, is prototyped. 1979, the Sony Walkman is released, making music portable for the masses. In the late 70s, hip-hop culture rises in New York. DJs and MCs innovate turntablism and rap, shaping global music thereafter. 1980s. MIDI. Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Introduced 1983. Allows electronic instruments and computers to communicate, transforming music production. The compact disc, CD, is launched in 1982, bringing digital audio to consumers with superior fidelity and durability. Pop music attains worldwide reach via MTV, 1981, and megastars like Michael Jackson and Madonna. Simultaneously, genres fragment into heavy metal, synth pop, world music fusions. Traditional music finds new audiences through world music marketing in the West. 1990s. The digital age truly takes off. MP3 compression, standardized in 1993, enables music to be easily stored and shared on computers. The late 90s see the rise of the internet as a distribution platform, e.g. Napster in 1999, a disruptive shift in the music industry. Meanwhile, genres like electronic dance music, techno, house, trance, and global pop scenes flourish. 1997. The first virtual singer, Vocaloid technology, is conceived in research, hinting at AI in music. 2000s. The iPod, 2001, and digital music stores, iTunes 2003, changed listening habits, followed by streaming services in the 2010s, Spotify, etc., that grant instant access to millions of songs but upend traditional album economics. Live concert technology also advances sophisticated sound reinforcement, huge LED shows, making global tours spectacles. 2010s. AI-generated music begins to emerge from research labs to mainstream awareness. Machine learning models can now imitate composers or generate songs. For example, OpenAI's MuseNet and Jukebox, circa 2018-19, demonstrated AI composing in various styles. In parallel, human musicians increasingly use AI tools for assistance in mixing, mastering, or even co-composition. By the late 2010s, holographic performers, e.g. Japan's virtual pop star Hatsune Miku, and AI-composed pop tunes hint at a future where the definition of musician evolves. 2020s. Music in the era of social media and global streaming is more diverse and accessible than ever. Cross-genre and cross-cultural collaborations are commonplace, and virtually all world music traditions are available to hear online. The COVID-19 pandemic, 2020, forces a shift to virtual concerts and live stream performances, accelerating tech adoption in the music world. As of 2025, both the ancient and the cutting edge thrive. One can find a traditional gamelan performance on YouTube next to AI-generated ambient music streams, a testament to the rich timeline of sound and music that continues to unfold. Evolution of musical instruments across cultures. Musical instruments have continually evolved, reflecting human ingenuity and cultural exchange. The earliest instruments were likely percussion, objects struck or shaken, and simple wind instruments. Prehistoric finds show that by 40 years ago, humans crafted flutes from bird bone and mammoth ivory. These flutes, the oldest known examples of melody-producing instruments, suggest a well-developed musical sense among early Homo sapiens. It's also presumed that drums, made from wood or gourds with animal skin, existed in prehistoric times, though none survive from the Paleolithic. As soon as humans had hunting bows, 15 years ago, they likely noticed the twang of a plucked string, which perhaps inspired early harps or lyres by attaching strings to resonant frames. A 50-year-old bone fragment from Slovenia, the Divya Babe flute, with holes, possibly made by Neanderthals, on display. Early flutes like this represent the very first musical instruments, showing that even prehistoric humans created music. By the time of the first civilizations, all fundamental instrument families were present. In Mesopotamia, Sumer, c. 2500 BC, archaeologists have found the lyres of Ur, elaborate stringed instruments with wooden bodies and gold decoration, indicating their importance. Lyres and harps, plucked strings, probably evolved from the hunting bow, and they became symbols of status and spiritual significance. E.g., the lyre is prominent in ancient Greek mythology and art. Lutes, instruments with a neck and a resonating body, appear in Mesopotamian reliefs and Egyptian tomb paintings by 1500 BC. The oud, an Arabic short-necked lute, is a direct descendant. It traveled along trade routes, Silk Road, and later entered Europe as the lute during the Middle Ages. From the lute family eventually came the European guitar and violin via the Renaissance files. Indeed, many modern string instruments are part of this family tree. For example, the lute spread across Eurasia, evolving into myriad forms, from the Chinese pipa to the Indian sitar, through centuries of intercultural exchange. Wind instruments likewise have ancient origins in many cultures. End-blown flutes and reeds, like clarinet-type single reeds or oboe-like double reeds, were known in ancient Egypt. Tomb paintings show double clarinets, and Sumer, silver pipes. Trumpet-like instruments, horns made from animal horn or metal, were used for signals, e.g. shofar, ram's horn, in the Middle East, bronze trumpets in Egypt for military signals. Tutankhamun's tomb yielded such trumpets, and conch shells in the Americas and Pacific Islands. Over time, these evolved into valved brass instruments, the modern trumpet, horn, etc., in the 19th century, and complex woodwinds with key systems developed mostly in 17th, 19th C. Percussion instruments are perhaps the most universally present and varied. Early percussion included drums, frame drums, barrel drums, rattles, shakers, and idiophones like scrapers or clappers. Ancient Egypt had sistra, ritual rattles. Ancient China had bronze bells and stone chimes by 1000 BC, with massive tuned bell sets like the Marquis Yi's bells, c. 433 BC, covering multiple octaves. Xylophones originated in Southeast Asia and spread to Africa by the first millennium AD. In Africa, the drum became a centerpiece of music, e.g., the talking drums of West Africa, used for communication. Percussion diversity exploded in the Americas too, from Aztec huedel drums to Andean rainsticks. These instruments often carried deep cultural significance, e.g., drums in shamanic rituals, bells in religious ceremonies. A major innovation in instrument evolution was the development of keyboard instruments. The earliest was the ancient Greek hydraulis, water organ. In the 3rd century BC, an organ using water pressure to stabilize airflow. This concept led to the medieval pipe organ, air-driven without water, used in churches by the 1st millennium AD. Later, the clavichord and harpsichord, 14th, 15th C, allowed dynamic or pluck string keyboard control, respectively. Finally, the piano combined both string and percussion principles. Invented around 1700, it used hammers striking strings and allowed variable loudness, hence pianoforte. The piano became one of the most influential instruments in Western music from the 18th century onward. Instrument evolution accelerated in the Industrial Revolution era, 19th, 20th centuries. Factories enabled mass production and innovation. The saxophone, Adolphe Sax, 1840s, introduced a woodwind brass hybrid. The tuba completed the brass family, c. 1835. Many non-Western instruments also adapted. For example, the harmonium pump organ brought Western pitch-fixed chords into Indian music in the 19th C, and the steel drum, pan, was innovated in Trinidad in the 1940s from oil barrels, reflecting post-industrial creativity. In the 20th century, entirely new classes of instruments emerged with electricity and electronics. The theremin, 1920, allowed playing without touch by sensing hand positions in electromagnetic fields, producing an eerie continuous tone. Its uniqueness made it famous in early electronic music and film scores. The ondes matano, 1928, and trautonium, 1930, were other early electronic instruments using oscillators. The big leap came with the synthesizer. Early modular synthesizers in the 1960s, Moog, Buchla, used analog circuits to generate and shape sounds, effectively able to imitate or entirely invent timbres. Synthesizers started as room-sized machines and became portable by the 1970s, vastly expanding popular music's sound palette, from the Beatles' Moog experiments to Stevie Wonder's funk. The electric guitar, popularized in the 1950s with models like the Fender Stratocaster, revolutionized popular music with its amplified sound and new techniques, distortion, feedback, that defined rock music. By the late 20th century, digital instruments arrived. Digital synthesizers, Yamaha's DX7 in 1983, samplers that could record and play any sound, and computer software instruments. Almost any sound is now achievable and manipulable, blurring the line between instrument and studio technology. Yet, alongside these high-tech instruments, traditional handcrafted instruments, violins, ouds, African drums, etc., continue to be made and played, often with centuries-old techniques, a testament to the enduring legacy of instrument evolution across cultures. Key inventions in sound and music. Throughout history, certain inventions and innovations have dramatically changed how music is created, recorded, and shared. Some key developments include notation systems, printing technology, audio recording, playback devices, and electronic innovations. Musical notation. The invention of written notation allowed music to be preserved and taught beyond oral tradition. The earliest known notation comes from Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets, e.g., the Hurrian song, c. 1400 BC. Ancient Greek notation, 3rd C. BC onward, used alphabetic symbols for pitches and rhythms, enabling songs like the Sekilos epitaph to survive. In medieval Europe, notation was reinvented. Around the 9th century, neumes diacritic, like Marx, indicated melodic contour for chants. This evolved with Guido d'Arezzo's 11th century innovation of a staff with lines and clefs, which fixed pitch reference. By the 13th century, rhythmic notation developed, Franconian notation, and in the late Middle Ages and Renaissance, the modern 5-line staff with fractional note values took shape. Other cultures had notation too. Medieval Indian swaras, sol, fa syllables, were written as mnemonic letters. Chinese notation sometimes used characters for pitches or tablature for instruments, and Byzantine chant used its own nume system. Notation not only preserved music, but also spurred theoretical development, e.g., allowing polyphony to be composed and synchronized. It remains a cornerstone of Western classical music and has been adapted for many world musics. Music printing. After Gutenberg's printing press, 15th century, printing music was a logical next step. The first polyphonic music printed with movable type was in 1501, Ottaviano Petrucci's Harmonies Musices Ode Catan in Venice, a collection of chansons. Petrucci's success made notated music more widely available and affordable. Later, innovators like Pierre Attaignat, Paris 1520s, developed single-impression music printing, faster and cheaper. The spread of printed music in Europe allowed composers' works to circulate internationally, standardized repertoire, e.g., hymn books, instructional manuals, and even helped unify tuning and theory practices. In other parts of the world, publishing came later. For instance, the first printed collection of Indian classical compositions appeared in the 19th century. Overall, printing transformed music from localized traditions to shareable art, setting the stage for the concept of a musical canon and global music literature. Recording and playback technologies. The ability to record sound fundamentally changed music in the late 19th century. Thomas Edison's phonograph, 1877, was the first practical sound recorder. It etched sound waves onto tinfoil cylinders and allowed playback, astonishing the public. By the 1890s, gramophones, using flat discs, championed by Emil Berliner, became popular, and the 78 RPM shellac disc was standard by early 20th century. These inventions meant music no longer needed live performers for an audience to hear it, a seismic shift in distribution and consumption. In the 20th century, recording quality and format improved steadily. Electrical recording, using microphones, 1920s, increased fidelity. Vinyl LP records, 1948, allowed longer recordings, up to 45 min per disc, than 78s, and stereophonic sound, 1950s, added spatial depth to recordings. The magnetic tape, developed in the 1930s-40s, enabled editing and multi-track layering. Artists could now record in separate takes and even perform duets with themselves. By the 1960s, magnetic tape led to cassettes, a convenient home audio format. The compact disc, CD, introduced in 1982, brought digital technology to consumers, with crystal clear sound and immunity to analog wear. Each leap made music more portable and durable, from fragile shellac to vinyl to digital files. Broadcast and amplification. Alongside recording, the radio wireless audio, broadcasting, was a key 20th century invention. From Lee de Forest's 1906 audion tube, enabling voice, music transmission, to the first entertainment radio stations in the 1920s, radio quickly disseminated music to huge audiences, creating the first pop stars and globally popular songs. Amplification technology, starting with the vacuum tube amplifier, 1910s, allowed instruments to be heard in large venues and gave rise to new instruments, electric guitar, electric organ, the microphone, carbon mic in 1870s, then condenser and dynamic mics by 1920s, made intimate vocal styles possible. The crooners of the 1930s relied on mics. By mid-20th century, large PA systems and amplifiers made rock concerts for tens of thousands feasible. Broadcast television, 1950s, further boosted musical visibility, e.g. the Beatles' famous Ed Sullivan Show appearance in 1964. Each communication invention, radio, TV, internet, has amplified music's reach. Electronic instruments and digital music. The 20th century saw instrument inventions unlike anything prior. We've noted the theremin and synthesizer already. Additionally, drum machines, e.g. Roland TR-808 in 1980, and samplers, Fairlight CMI 1979, allowed musicians to create rhythms and replicate sounds electronically. The electric guitar, mass-marketed by Gibson and Fender in the 1950s, and its associated effects, pedals, fuzz, reverb, etc., revolutionized timbre and technique in popular music. By the late 20th century, personal computers became music tools. The 1980s saw software, like MIDI sequencers, and by the 1990s digital audio workstations, Pro Tools, etc., could record and manipulate dozens of tracks on a screen, a studio in a box, the internet, and compressed audio, MP3, then shifted how music was stored and shared, leading to today's streaming era, where a song is often a purely digital product. Music notation software, AI. In the 1990s, 2000s, notation software. Finale Sibelius. Simplified composing and printing music, while software synthesizers and sample libraries put entire orchestras in a computer. Recently, artificial intelligence tools have become a new invention in music. Not a physical device, but algorithms capable of generating music. Early experiments like the Iliac Suite, 1957, a string quartet composed by a computer program, hinted at this. In the 21st century, machine learning models can produce remarkably convincing instrumental pieces, or even mimic specific artists' styles. While AI music is still emerging, it represents a new frontier analogous to past inventions. Just as the phonograph or synthesizer once expanded musical possibilities, AI offers novel creative tools and raises questions about authorship and artistry in music. Each of these inventions, from writing a note on a page to capturing sound in a groove, from electrifying a string to encoding music in bits and bytes, has had profound impact. They have enabled music to transcend time through recordings and notation, and space through broadcasts and digital networks, ensuring that a melody can be shared from one end of the world to the other, or one millennium to the next. Music and ritual, religion, and social life. Music has always been deeply woven into the ritual, religious, and social fabric of human societies. In ancient times, music often served sacred purposes. It was used to invoke deities, mark life cycle events, and unite communities. For example, in ancient Egypt, music was integral to religious worship. Temple musicians, often priestesses of the goddess Hathor, performed on sistra ritual rattles and harps to honor the gods. Egyptian tomb paintings depict banquets where musicians and dancers entertained guests in the afterlife, indicating that music bridged the human and divine, and that pleasure in music was expected to continue beyond death. Musicians and dancers depicted in an ancient Egyptian tomb fresco, Tomb of Nebumun, 1350 BC. Such artwork illustrates how music and dance were central to social and religious gatherings. Here, flutists and women clapping or dancing perform at a banquet, possibly honoring the deceased or the gods. Music in this context was both entertainment and a ritual offering. In many cultures, ritual music is among the oldest form of music. Chanting is common in spiritual practices worldwide. Gregorian chant in medieval Christian monasteries, Vedic chants in Hindu ceremonies, Quranic recitation, a melodic form of Holy Scripture, in Islam, and Buddhist chanting in monasteries from Tibet to Japan. These chants often follow strict traditional formulas, believed to connect practitioners with the sacred. Hymns and devotional songs are another ubiquitous form. From the bhajans and kirtans of India to the gospel songs of African American churches, music allows congregations to express faith collectively. In some belief systems, music itself is considered a gift from the divine. For instance, in many African mythologies, the first music or instrument was given to humans by a god or culture hero. Music in communal ritual often serves to strengthen social bonds and communicate cultural values. Indigenous communities globally use music in ceremonies that mark seasons or life events. For example, among many Native American tribes, drum circles and powwow songs accompany dances that honor ancestors, bring rain, or heal the sick. The repetitive rhythms and shared singing can induce trance or collective effervescence, reinforcing group identity. In West African villages, music and dance are inseparable from ceremonies like weddings, funerals, and initiations. The talking drums of the Akan or Yoruba not only entertain, but also send proverbial messages, effectively speaking on behalf of the community in ritual contexts. Religious services across the world have been shaped by their music. The Gregorian chants of the Catholic Church, starting around the 7th century, were thought to facilitate a contemplative state, suitable for worship. Later, polyphonic masses and chorales added complexity and congregational participation, e.g., Martin Luther's 16th C. Protestant Reformation encouraged the singing of hymns by the whole congregation. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, unaccompanied choral chanting, often in elaborate harmonies, is a hallmark of liturgy. In Islam, while formal music may be absent inside mosques, apart from the vocal call to prayer, outside the mosque context, devotional music thrives, such as Sufi Qawwali music in South Asia, intended to bring listeners to spiritual ecstasy. Music also plays a role in seasonal and agricultural rituals. Traditional cultures often have songs for planting and harvest, meant to appease nature spirits or ensure good crops. In parts of Europe, Christmas carols and winter songs have pre-Christian roots in solstice celebrations. In China, court music rituals like the ceremony of Zhou, with tuned bells and stone chimes, were performed to maintain cosmic harmony at the new year. Such ceremonial musics reinforce the community's relationship with the natural and spiritual world. Beyond formal religion, social uses of music are abundant. Music accompanies dance and festivity, which are vital for social cohesion. Communal dances, Whether a village circle dance, a royal court ballet, or a modern rave, all rely on music to synchronize movement and emotion among participants. Folk songs and work songs historically helped coordinate labor sailors' shanties for pulling ropes in unison, farmers' songs to ease fieldwork. In many cultures, lullabies soothe babies, and laments or dirges express grief at funerals, showing music's presence at all stages of life. Music has also been used as a symbol of identity and resistance. National anthems like La Marseillaise or Nkosi Sikelel, Ifrika, rally collective national pride, often originating in periods of revolution or liberation. Spirituals and gospels in enslaved African communities in America carried coded messages of hope and resistance. Protest songs and freedom anthems, from the labor movement songs in the early 20th century to anti-war songs in the 1960s, have proven the power of music to unite people for social causes and give voice to the voiceless. In summary, whether in a religious temple, a royal court, or around a campfire, music has served as a conduit for the sacred, a marker of community identity, and a facilitator of social cohesion. It's the background, and often the focal point, for human rituals, from the most solemn prayers, funerals, to the most joyous, festivals, weddings. This enduring role underscores why virtually every culture's myths trace music's origin to a divine or mystical source. Music has an almost magical ability to move human hearts and knit individuals into a shared spiritual or social experience. The digital age, electronic music, and AI. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have brought music into the digital age, radically transforming how sound is produced and experienced. A key turning point was the advent of electronic music and eventually digital technology, which expanded sonic possibilities beyond what acoustic instruments could achieve. The journey began with inventions like the synthesizer in the 1960s. Early analog synthesizers, Moog, ARP, Buchla, etc., used electrical circuits, oscillators, filters, envelope generators to create tones. They could imitate acoustic instruments or produce completely new sounds, from ethereal pads to electronic effects. In 1968, Wendy Carlos's album Switched on Bach performed entirely on a Moog synthesizer, won Grammy Awards, and proved electronic instruments' musical legitimacy. By the 1970s, synthesizers were ubiquitous in popular music, heard in progressive rock, disco, funk, etc. And new portable models, Mini Moog, polyphonic synths like Prophet 5, made them accessible to touring bands. The 1980s saw the rise of digital synthesizers and samplers. The Yamaha DX7, 1983, was a landmark digital synth that used FM synthesis to generate distinctive timbres, like the famous electric piano sound, and sold in huge numbers. Samplers like the Fairlight and Akai allowed musicians to record any sound and play it on a keyboard, blurring the line between instrument and studio technique. The computerization of music accelerated with the introduction of MIDI, 1983, a universal protocol that let keyboards, drum machines, and computers talk to each other. MIDI enabled a single musician to control an entire virtual orchestra of synthesizers, or to compose music on a screen by placing notes, which the computer could then play back. Personal computers in the 1990s became powerful enough for full digital audio recording. Software like Pro Tools, Cubase, and Logic replaced much of what a recording studio did, allowing artists to produce professional music at home. This democratized music production. One could program a drum beat, layer tracks, and edit digitally with precision that tape never allowed. The digital age also changed music consumption. The launch of the MP3 format in the late 1990s, and devices like the iPod in 2001, meant that physical media, CDs, tapes, began to give way to digital files. By the 2010s, streaming services let listeners access millions of songs instantly, albeit with a shift from owning music to renting access. This has had mixed impacts. On one hand, listeners now enjoy an unprecedented diversity of music. One can jump from Mongolian throat singing to Mozart to K-pop in minutes, and niche genres found global micro-audiences. On the other hand, artists and industry have had to adapt to new economic models, since streaming pays differently than album sales, for instance. Importantly, the digital era made music global and cross-pollinating in real time. A producer in Nigeria can incorporate Brazilian samba samples. A traditional Japanese folk song can gain international pop remixes on YouTube. Electronic dance music, EDM, became a global lingua franca by the 2000s, with DJs and producers from many countries sharing software, synth presets, and stylistic influences entirely online. Collaborations happen via file sharing without artists ever meeting in person. Social media and platforms like SoundCloud further enabled emerging artists to find audiences directly, bypassing old gatekeepers. One of the most frontier developments now is AI in music creation. Artificial intelligence had flirted with music since the mid-20th century. For example, In 1957, the ILLIACI computer composed the Iliac Suite, a string quartet based on algorithmic rules. Those early attempts were more curiosity than mainstream. But in recent years, machine learning and deep neural networks have given AI music a big leap. Projects like Google's Magenta and OpenAI's MuseNet and Jukebox, trained on massive datasets of songs, have shown that AI can generate music in many styles, from Baroque to jazz to hip-hop. AI models can now continue a musical prompt, harmonize melodies, or even mimic the voice of a singer with tools like deepfake audio. Startups offer AI-composed stock music for videos, and some pop producers use AI to suggest riffs or beats. There are even examples of albums created with heavy AI assistance. For instance, an album I Am AI, 2017, by singer Terrence Southern was marketed as one of the first to be entirely produced with AI tools. The rise of AI-generated music sparks both excitement and debate. Optimists see it as a new tool. Much like synthesizers expanded the sound palette, AI can generate ideas or even personalize music, e.g., background scores that adapt to a video game player's actions in real time, or custom lullabies composed based on a baby's heartbeat. AI might help resurrect the styles of bygone artists by analyzing their works and creating new compositions in their vein, or help listeners discover new fusion genres that no human had thought to mix. Pessimists, however, worry about the authenticity and labor implications. If AI can churn out thousands of generic pop songs, what happens to human songwriters? There are also ethical questions. AI can be trained on existing music, raising copyright issues, and deepfake vocals of real artists could be misused. Even as these cutting-edge issues unfold, it's important to note that the human element in music remains vital. Live concerts, for example, have grown in importance for artists' livelihoods as recording revenue fell, suggesting that audiences still crave the social and emotional connection of seeing musicians perform in person. Interestingly, digital technology has enhanced live shows too. Elaborate electronic light shows synchronized to music, holographic performers, etc., blending the virtual and real. In conclusion, the digital age has been characterized by unprecedented innovation. From electronic instruments that redefine sound, to digital networks that redefine distribution, to AI that challenges our notions of creativity. This era, like all others in music history, builds on what came before. The electronic beats of today often sample rhythms that might be traced back to tribal drums, and an AI composer still relies on human musical concepts to make sense. As we move further into the 21st century, the history of sound and music continues to be written with each new technology and each new song, a living symphony of human creativity, cultural tradition, and scientific progress. Learn more about art, history, and music at oransbooks.com. Please like and subscribe, and may the rest of your life be the best of your life. Oran Z Belgrave Sr.